The question that I would love for all of you to tell me in the Zoom chat is, how do you promote or implement math discourse with students? If you need the question, it is also in the chat. We're going to take 20 seconds for all of you to reflect. How do you promote or implement math discourse with students? And don't worry, if you're not doing it with ST Math, just tell me in general how you're already doing it in your classrooms. I love that Gail said by asking questions, me to students and students to students. Gail, really excited to share a resource coming our way that I think you'll be really excited about. Group work during math. Vary each other's answer keys. Sandra, I love that accountability and that teamwork. Notice and wondering, unpacking standards with students. Turn and talks, one of my old school favorite moves that I used to use in the classroom. Group work, asking students to think about something. Turn and talks, and so much more. In the next 5 seconds, if you didn't have an opportunity to share in the chat, Tori, feel free to also jump in if you get anything on your end on the other chat. I'd love to hear from everybody, regardless of what chat they're using.
Sounds good.
Workshops, groups, making students accountable for their learning. Team, thank you for finding the Zoom chat and thank you for jumping in with that participation, because I want to begin by grounding us all in the definition of promoting mathematical discourse and the standards of mathematical practice that we're going to be using for our session today. By talking about math, students are processing the math in different ways than when they work with paper and pencil, manipulatives, or even visuals or drawings. The opportunity to connect math and language benefits all of our students, and it really deepens the understanding of the math concepts. Because when students connect math and language, what they're doing is they're creating conjectures. They are linking prior knowledge to their current understanding. They're using reasoning about mathematics. They're refining or they're amending their approaches, and they're taking ownership of their mathematical knowledge. And by learning the tools of mathematical discourse, they're learning different tools such as vocabulary, symbols, diagrams, physical models, and technology. And students learn to present and defend their ideas, as well as thoughtfully being able to critique the ideas of others. And we all know some of the benefits of this academic discourse can be to clarify understandings for our students, have them constructing convincing arguments, developing the language to express mathematical ideas, and learning to see things from others' perspectives. And so with that framework in mind, I'm going to invite all of you to take the next 5 seconds. Tori's also going to be dropping the definition in the chat, but I invite all of you to read the definition on the screen of the mathematical discourse that we're going to be using for the context of our session today. Thank you for jumping into that definition. Just wanted to lay that groundwork. And I want to make sure that I highlight the standard of mathematical practice for our time for next level academic discourse is going to be to construct the viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. Now, with the lens of mathematical or academic discourse, I'm now excited to jump into an ST Math game to highlight how academic discourse with ST Math can encourage all of your students, all students, to build a strong math vocabulary. Since we're all coming together as educators who support a variety of different grade levels, K, all the way up to possibly 8th grade, I'm excited to actually give you 3 options for ST Math games. In the chat, you are going to see 3 options. I even broke them up by grade band just so we could get really specific and you could make a choice. I'm going to invite all of you to just choose one game from the links that are now in the Zoom chat. Please open that one game link from the links in the chat. Once you open up one of the games that you have chosen from the 3 that are listed in the chat, I want to flag for all of you before I give you directions for our activity that these ST Math games that I've provided for all of you are going to be abbreviated journeys of the games created for all of you incredible educators for this next level learning session. If students were to engage in these real ST Math games, they would go through and scaffold much more slowly over levels. So I wanted to just note that for everybody as we dive into our activity. For the next 2 minutes, I ask that you play and engage with the game that you have chosen from the links in the chat. And while doing so, this is where that pen and paper or that note-taking tool comes into play. I'm going to invite all of you to please jot down any math words or vocabulary that you can think of that are connected to the game that you have chosen. As many as you can think about. All of your thoughts, go ahead and jot them down. Tori just dropped the directions in the chat in case you need to reference them again. In the next 2 minutes, as you're playing the game and engaging, writing down math words and vocabulary that you are learning and exploring. When we come back together, please get ready to share that out in the chat. Let us know if you have any questions. 2 minutes, go ahead and jump in. Great. So I'm sorry to do it, but I want to pause all of you. I know if you're anything like me, you're probably well deep into a few different puzzles in the game that you chose, but I want us to pause. I promise you that I'm going to give you another opportunity later in our time together to dive back into an ST Math game with a resource. But what I would love for all of you to do, because many of you have already started doing this, which I've been loving in the chat, please go ahead and take 20 seconds and please go ahead and list out some of those math words or vocabulary words that you discovered as you played your ST Math game. If you're done early or if you've already completed it, feel free to scroll up and see what other participants put in the chat. I'm seeing balance, equal weight, amount. Let's take 10 more seconds. Cubic units, greater than, less than, full, empty, compare. Capacity, volume, cubic, ordering, heavier, lighter, exponents. We have 5 more seconds to get them in the chat. Multiples, least to greatest. Volume, multiply, length, width, height, measure, prisms.
They did awesome.
That's great. Thank you so much, team, for jumping into that activity. But now I'm excited to kind of really get into the meat of our time together today and to highlight, why did we just do that activity? So I know that at times, many educators can be a little uncomfortable using ST Math sometimes as a teaching tool because they say, Hannah Rose, I'm not familiar with the games. However, I just had all of you play an ST Math game and engage in this activity. And you may or may not have ever seen this ST Math game before, and you crushed it. You were able to highlight different math vocabulary in 2 short minutes. And with this vocabulary that you just highlighted in this 2 minutes, you also engaged and played possibly a new ST Math game. Now, this is a super quick turnkey activity that all of you can do with your students to get them thinking about the math and to start the conversation about math. Zoning in on one aspect, such as in this activity, vocabulary, is a really great learning activity and an incredible entry point that can aid towards other areas and to build on academic discourse in your classrooms. All of you could display an ST Math game during a math meeting or an introduction to your math lesson, a completion of a math lesson, maybe a small group activity, a whole class activity, or even one-on-one with a student. And you could have students identify in the ST Math game that you've pulled up the math vocabulary or terms attached to the ST Math displayed game that you're engaging with your students at that time. Now, I want to take it a step further because you're all incredible educators. So I also want you to imagine if you kept a running list on an anchor chart of this ST Math vocabulary as students begin to elicit answers, when they share strategies, explain their thinking, and they could always have this living chart in your classrooms to reference. So you could encourage them continuously as you build this academic mathematical discourse with ST Math. You can have and encourage your students to use these words that they came up with. And it's not only about the math, but it's learning and molding our students to evaluate and to think about how they are talking about the mathematics. The facilitation of mathematical discourse with ST Math truly is going to be low lift for educators, but incredible high impact for all of your students. The discourse with ST Math can happen with any of the games and can be facilitated again with individual students, small group, or whole group. Because mathematical discourse in ST Math, using ST Math, will be an extension of what you are already doing in your core math block. And it's going to ensure that all of your students are continuously strengthening their critical thinking skills and conceptual understanding of the math content. Now, this might be a familiar visual to many of you, or it might be brand new, and it's arguably one of my favorites. And this is going to be one of the resources that all of you are going to be using in our next activity in a few minutes. Because as students begin to engage in mathematical discourse in all of your classrooms, after this session, we have a resource to support educators, all of you, and students to have a foundation to enter into, deepen, and extend themselves in this academic discourse. This is the problem-solving process. The problem-solving process is supported by the perception action cycle, which is how our brains learn naturally. And this is the process that students' brains go through when they log on and they play ST Math games. And you can use the steps in the problem-solving process to help students productively struggle and persevere if they get to a game that challenges them. And this is also going to be the resource to help you begin or deepen or extend that mathematical discourse that is happening in your classrooms. We will begin for the problem-solving process as a refresher to some of you, but maybe brand new to some of you as well, totally fine. And the problem-solving process you're going to see begins with notice and wonder. This is going to be a time for students to share what they see in the puzzle, and it begins to make your students curious. Once a student has had a chance, or students have had a chance to share, they can then move to the next domain, predict and justify, and make a prediction for how to help Gigi get across the screen. Students are going to provide in this domain a justification or reasoning for that prediction. Next, you're going to see that students move to, they have a chance to test their ideas and to observe on the screen what happens. If we want students to understand what happened versus possibly what they thought would happen on the puzzle on the screen, we want to provide a time for them to do that observing. In the next step of the problem-solving process, we're on the purple domain, analyze and learn. Students analyze and learn based on that feedback that they see on that screen, that formative animated feedback, which you'll see in a few minutes. If they are successful, you discuss why they think that worked. If they were unsuccessful, they have an opportunity to also discuss why that didn't work and possibly what they're going to try next. Students need to know that their brain is a muscle, and implementing the problem-solving process, which supports and builds that academic discourse in all of your classrooms, can be one of those workouts that's going to build that muscle for students. Now, I'm excited because you just heard me go over the problem-solving process, but it would be crazy if I didn't put this resource in all of your hands. Tori's just dropped into the chat the problem-solving process resource. If you click on the link that Tori just sent into the chat, I'm going to invite all of you to take 30 seconds. I want you to take 30 seconds to digest and begin to have ideas blossom from this resource and how you can incorporate this in your classroom with academic discourse. You're also welcome to download this PDF, save it on your desktop or drive so you can easily access it for the new school year or maybe even this summer with students. Let us know if you have any questions. Take the next 30 seconds. Tori, if you see any new educators pop in to our session, feel free to reshare that resource and we'll go ahead and have them open it up as well. Team, if you're just joining us, thank you so much for jumping into Next Level Academic Discourse. Tori just put a resource in the chat. I invite you to open it and take the next 15 seconds to download it and begin to digest and have ideas blossom of how you can use this resource with academic discourse in your classrooms. Team, we're going to take 10 more seconds. Great. That problem-solving process bookmark is going to be a resource that we're actually going to combine with an ST Math game in a few minutes after I give you an example of what this can look like. So I'm excited now to pivot because I want to use this resource that is now in all of your hands that we just quickly went over. And I want to show you how we can connect it with ST Math to encourage academic discourse. As I dive into this example, I encourage you to keep this problem-solving process bookmark open on your screen because we're going to be encouraging all of you to take notes, highlight questions that I possibly asked that you really love and are excited to ask with your students. And I also want to make a quick note that Tori is going to be dropping in possible questions that I have listed out for each of you from the problem-solving process in the chat. So know that you can look at the chat, have your resource up, and begin to understand how this resource is really going to empower all of you to begin that academic discourse using ST Math in your classrooms with all of your students. This is going to be level 1 of an ST Math game, Slinky Objects. Some of you may have chosen this in the beginning. This is going to be in the band of about K to 3, and this is the 3rd grade version of it. Now, even though you and a student, I do want to highlight, possibly, maybe some of you have already played this game. Maybe a student will say, Mrs. Laidlaw, I played this in my ST Math journey. I want to note that you can have a rich discourse, especially in the analyze and connect section, even if a student has experienced this game before, possibly like all of you. And so please remember also that students are doing the work. You aren't teaching them ever how to play the puzzle. You are providing prompts for discussion through the questioning and then following their lead. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Remember to have that problem-solving process open, that bookmark, and have the chat open as well. And please know that I will be asking you to jump in with participation during this quick model before I give all of you an opportunity to try it yourself. We know, actually, Tori, let's go ahead and ask everyone, what would be the first domain of the problem-solving process that I would hop into using this resource for the ST Math game? What is it called? Go ahead and drop it into the chat. Jana has it. Using that resource, and Tori, you can drop that resource one more time. Absolutely. Jana, she got it before I could even finish the question. Notice and wonder. Students at any ability level have an entry point when we have academic discourse using the problem-solving process bookmark in our classrooms. Notice and wonder. Tori's going to be dropping some of the possible questions that you can ask in this section. Friends, what can we click on? What do you notice on the screen? Gabby, why do you think that that is important? Krista, do you wonder about anything else that you're seeing? For example, on this ST Math game, a student may respond, Mrs. Laidlaw, I notice a scale on the screen, but then on the bottom, I see like a big water jug. I think that's a TV or computer screen, 2 hooks on the top, and I see a really cool purple slinky. Great. Doreen, why do you think that that's important, what your friend just noticed? Friends, I also, and team, I want to pause. Notice how I'm calling out a few different names of my amazing colleagues, but I want you to know that when you're promoting academic discourse using the problem-solving process in your classroom, we want students to not only learn to evaluate their own thinking, but their peers' thinking. So it's really great, especially when you're doing this as a community with a small group or a whole group, call in multiple students for multiple questions in each section. I think that it's important because we need to get the slinky down or across, and I think that we need to use the 2 different objects to do that. I wonder why the hooks are there, and I'm not quite sure how they're going to help us. Then, team, we move into, in the problem-solving process, predict and justify. This is an important piece of academic discourse. Students shouldn't only be talking to you, but remember, we want them really explaining their thoughts to each other. However, there are multiple ways that you can get students thinking. All of that incredible facilitation that you do in your classrooms, use it during academic discourse and ST Math. Turn and talk, stop and jot, whisper to yourself, turn to a partner, a group of 4, etc. All of that can come alive as you're promoting mathematical discourse using ST Math. Now, for example, and here's where all of you come in. When I say go, I want all of the next level learners on this session to take 10 seconds. And I want you to respond to the question that Tori's dropping into the chat, which is, what do you think the puzzle is asking us to do? And how do you know? What do you think the puzzle is asking us to do? And how do you know? Go ahead and drop that into the chat, 10 seconds. Ooh, look at Sandra, compare the mass of the 2 objects. We have the weight of the objects, compare the mass. Don't forget to tell me why. Predict and justify. See if a few more people type in, 5 more seconds. Order the objects by weight to make the slinky go down. I love it. Tori, we got 25 people. I'm going to push everyone. 3 more seconds. What do you think this puzzle is asking us to do, and how do you know? To find the weight, which is lighter, which is heavier. Great answers in the chat. And I want to make sure that I highlight again, just like I had all of you do, the second part of this is critically important, which is for students to justify their thinking for their prediction. This is important because it helps students to clarify their thoughts, and it also helps them measure whether or not their explanation is reasonable. And so even though a student may share out during this academic discourse in ST Math an incorrect strategy or thought process, it's actually really important to also know that you can discuss and highlight these misconceptions during this time as well. Now, for this next section, we're going to move to testing and observing, but we have to put our thinking on the screen. So I'm going to call on Victoria. Victoria, what did you share with your partner? What was your prediction and why? Mrs. Laidlaw is going to put it on the screen for all of us to learn from you.
So I think from what we said, we had to put the milk jug over on the right hook. And then, is that a TV? It is.
It
right?
is a TV,
Okay.
yes.
So, okay. And then, wait, hold on. I think my partner's telling me to switch it. So we're going to put the milk jug on the first hook because we just realized that a TV is heavier.
I love that
Yeah.
partner work. We're going to listen to your friend and their thoughts too. Great.
Yeah. And we think that because there's a break in the like orange tiles up there, that the TV's going to get weighed down more and the slinky will move better.
Great. I also want to highlight that Gabby and her partner Deb, they use the scale in the middle, friends. So if you didn't use the scale, you'll have an opportunity with the next puzzle. And they also use this scale with the objects to also be able to begin to have a discussion as well. Shout out to Gabby and Deb. Wonder who's going to use that scale for next time. But Tori, you and your partner, we're going to be going with your thoughts. Now, team, we're moving to testing and observing. And during this time, there might not be a huge amount of discourse that's happening with your students, but it's really critical to the problem-solving process. And what Tori is going to go ahead and send in the chat, which I want to highlight for all of you, is during this test and observe, when you click this green go button, don't forget on ST Math, one of our in-game tools is I can click on that green go button and I can double click on the screen to pause my animation. Now I can ensure that all of my students would be able to engage with. Can someone describe for me, what did we see on the screen and why? Is this what you expected to happen, or did you think something different? It's an equitable approach to ensure that all of my students that are in this discourse are all able to participate in various ways by taking this ball on the scrub bar at the top of the screen, and I'm just pulling forwards and backwards. Tori, drop that into the chat. So I'm going to keep it paused. And by keeping it paused, we move to the analyze and learn. This is where students get to analyze and learn this formative animated feedback that is built into all ST Math games. The solution was correct because we were incorrect because this is what I thought would happen, but this is actually what happened with Gigi on the screen. One thing I learned was, one thing I want to change next time is, and this is the time where we can sit with all of our students still in the same puzzle paused by using this formative animated feedback to analyze and to learn. And with the connect and extend, I want to highlight for all of you before I give you an opportunity to jump in and practice yourselves with an ST Math game. This is where you can connect all of the incredible other math work that you're doing in the classroom. This is where you can take the learning from ST Math and connect it to different conjectures, concepts, strategies that you're doing in the classroom and marry them together. This is an opportunity to connect and extend that in your classroom. So it really becomes part of the culture of learning that is happening with all of your students. Now, I want to give all of you an opportunity to go ahead and to try this out. By try this out, what I want to invite all of you to do is a quick 3-minute activity. In the next 3 minutes, what I want to invite all of you to do is, Tori is dropping in the chat the suggested ST Math game list. You have an option. The option is you can scroll through and find for different grade levels, different games that are suggested. And what you're going to see in the document in the middle column is the objective. So once you choose one game, you simply just have to click on the hyperlinked objective, find the game, and you can access it. The only quick thing that I'll flag is it is best to be signed into your ST Math account. Tori, if you wouldn't mind dropping into the chat, if somebody doesn't want to sign into their ST Math account and use the suggested game list, they can use one of the 3 games that we offered them at the beginning of our time together today to participate in this activity. What I'm going to invite all of you to do for the next few minutes is I'm going to invite you to use the problem-solving process and one of the games that you have chosen either from the list or the 3 that Tori's going to send in the chat. And what I want you to do is I want you to use the bookmark similar to what I did. And I want you to begin to think about how this is going to look and sound in your classroom. What questions are you going to begin to dive in with your students the first week of school? How are you going to facilitate using the problem-solving process bookmark to encourage and incorporate academic discourse with ST Math in your classrooms? We're going to take the next 2 minutes using the problem-solving process bookmark and the game that you have chosen from the list or the links in the chat. Please dive in. Let us know if you have any questions. And I'm excited for all of us to come back together and wrap it up. And Tori, just in case anyone needs it, if you could just drop that problem-solving process bookmark one more time in the chat for quick, easy access.
Sure thing.
Team, I hope all of you have a game up, your problem-solving process bookmark up, and you are engaging by asking questions as you play the ST Math game. Madeline, that's a really good question. If you look at my screen right here, I'll show you that one more time. After you put your students' action or thinking on the screen, I'll just give a quick example. Madeline, it's a few clicks. Green button, double click on the blue sky, and that scrub bar will appear at the top. Great question. Thanks, Tori, for voicing that over in the chat. Team, we're going to come back together in about 20 seconds. If you haven't tried pausing that animation for the analyze section of the problem-solving process, I encourage you to try that in the next 20 seconds. Team, thank you so much for diving into that second activity. I hope that all of you had an opportunity to quickly experience how you can have an ST Math game and incorporate the problem-solving process to begin to encourage and have implemented in your classroom the mathematical discourse with all of your students. In the chat, what I just shared with all of you is one last resource. And this resource is actually going to be an extension resource of that bookmark that I'm sure all of you just fell in love with. And it's sentence stems. Many of you may be very excited because this is already something you implement in your classroom, but the problem-solving process sentence stems are a way to ensure that our students have a sentence stem starter to respond to the questions that you're asking them from the problem-solving process. That resource is in the chat. And again, it's a quick, easy PDF that you can download. And this can be a student-facing material. So as you continue to implement, extend, and deepen the academic discourse in your classroom, please feel free to use the sentence stems to encourage your students to respond to those questions that you're asking them during that academic discourse. Now, to wrap up our time together today, the last thing that I wanted to highlight with all of you is I don't have any other special powers than all of you have right there on your educator console. There are two really important buttons that I just wanted to highlight. If you look at my screen, this would look exactly like it did on your educator console. And on the top right corner, you are going to see a support button. And under support, you're going to see professional learning and ST Math help. Team. Under professional learning, that is where we have asynchronous modules, webinars, and you can dig deeper into various ST Math topics. It's one of my favorite things to do to really deepen my knowledge about ST Math. And then for ST Math Help, that is where you can type questions, keywords, and most importantly, I want to highlight that all of you can find the printables and resources right there under support and ST Math Help. When you click on resources and printables, the problem-solving process bookmark and the sentence stems are all going to live there, and many, many more incredible turnkey ST Math resources. Tori also just put into the chat for all of you the ST Math support team. That is going to be where you can go, email or call if you have any questions. And with that, thank you for letting me steal an extra 60 seconds of your time. Team, I hope that you feel empowered and encouraged going into this next school year to have academic discourse with ST Math with all of your students. Thank you so much for joining me for this session. Please enjoy the rest of your day at the Next Level Learning Conference, and I hope to see you in the near future at another professional learning training or any ST Math event. Feel free to stay on if you have any questions. If not, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thank you so much.